third generation to farm on my place. It was originally awarded to my grandfather. It's a World War II homestead.
Family was part of the 46 draw, and they came here and settled in 1947. My dad was a month old when they moved here from Hillsboro, Oregon. They had a homestead of 70 acres and built a home on it and a granary and farmland. And my grandfather was one of the original managers of the Newell Grain Growers Association.
One thing that people seem to forget is farming is a business, and more impactfully, it's a small business. Most of these farms that we deal with in the Klamath Basin are family owned and operated. The kids work on the farms during the summer. The moms and dads are in the farm office every day of the year, and it's their livelihood.
Kind of our family's claim to fame or legacy is that we grow horseradish, and grandfather was one of the original horseradish growers, and we still grow it today, one of two that are left growing here in the basin.
The very distinct possibility that the Klamath Irrigation Project is going to get shut down mid-summer in order to meet biological pinning requirements for fish that are listed under the Endangered Species Act. And that's what happened in 2001. That year the announcement was made that there would be a complete project shutdown for the first time in 95 years, and that was done in early April, before things had been planted in the ground.
It goes back to 2001 when a lot of the people that are here helping today were just kids. They were riding on fenders of tractors, and they were in the tractor rally that happened in 2001 when the water was shut off and this basin went through one of the most unprecedented disasters, economic and human disasters. Pretty black spot in our past, and something we've been working hard to get past since then.
When water, the key element that you have to grow anything, gets cut in half, it changes everything. And once you get past the initial shock of it and the mental impact, you have to figure out how you are financially and logistically going to do your job.
When I testified in 2004, it was 3 years after the shutoff here in Klamath, and people were still recovering from the 2001 shutoff just because of impacts to their equipment not running, weed problems, tax problems. It's horrific. And when a farmer goes out of business or can't produce, that impacts not just his family, it impacts the entire community. It impacts the fertilizer suppliers, it impacts the fertilizer and implement dealers. It impacts businesses in our community. I was on the board of the Chamber of Commerce at that time, and they did a survey of the community. This was right after 2001, and we had 9/11 and everything else. And they asked what was the biggest impact to the community in 2001, and by far it was the water curtailment to the irrigation project.
It started back in the spring when we were told that we would get little to no water this year.
And this time, people had already made an investment and there was seed in the ground and lots of dollars in the ground, millions of dollars. And if a shutoff had occurred after that investment had been made, the impact to the community would have been overwhelmingly way worse than 2001.
And we're very frustrated over the reasons why we weren't getting water, and a lot of it is to protect the species, which we understand that, and you need to protect the species. But what they've been doing, the Fish and Wildlife, National Marine Fisheries Service, over the last 20 years is not saved one sucker or one salmon.
When the allocation changed to 70,000 acre feet, it was to me it was heartbreaking, because I thought that maybe I'd be the generation that lost the farm.
Everybody planned for the first allocation, and they went to their banks, they got loans, they farmed ground, they put fertilizer down, did a lot of work on the prepping the land, and then they turned around, the agencies said, no, you're not going to get that 180, you're going to get 60, maybe less. So that's what really fired everybody up, because it would have broke a lot of farmers this year, because they had thousands of dollars investment per acre out there, and it would have just broke a lot of people. So that's what really fired it off. We just couldn't stand for that.
The more acres we take out, once those acres go out of production, they never come back. And turning this place into a giant solar field isn't going to help feed anybody. We need our farmers and ranchers to have a chance to do what they do. It's feed our basin and our country. I mean, ag is really important here in the Klamath Basin, from here all the way down to the lake in there. And once it's gone, it's gone.
So I'm third generation. My son and daughters are up and coming. Son's here with us today, helping to put this away, hopefully put this chapter of our history behind us and move on to better things, and give him an opportunity to take on the family farm and continue it when he gets out of college and comes back to farm.
We were supposed to start at 9 o'clock, and I was down there about 7 just to prep. And at that time, the line was already started. Couldn't believe it. I mean, then the line just kept growing and growing and growing. It was an amazing day.
.3 miles of vehicles on the road. When the first vehicles pulled here into the field, there were still vehicles pulling out of Merrill and making their way, and they cut off traffic down into downtown. And there were people that said, no, I'm going downtown, and they went right past the roadblocks and continued to go downtown.
And I just remember I was still down in Merrill at the sort of the staging area, and I was just pulling out with my wife onto Highway 39, and Scott called and told me he was at the front of the convoy, and they were in downtown Klamath Falls. So that's like 20-some miles. That just blew me away.
My name is Josh Shepard. I live in Northern California in the Sacramento Valley in a little town called Biggs, halfway between Chico and Sacramento. My family has been farming in that part of the world for 5 generations now.
For 25 years, the farmers and ranchers of the basin have supported the Northwest Pro Rodeo, so we're here to support the farmers and the ranchers.
I think it's really important to support the people in Klamath and help them resolve their issues, because really this could be the model that other parts of agriculture have to come back to and use.
Without the water, there's no farms. Without the farms, there's no food. So ag is a huge commodity in this basin. It doesn't just support the basin, but it supports the Pacific Northwest.
The efforts that the Klamath Basin is going through right now, the struggles are not just unique to Klamath. These issues are happen all over places in the nation where there's irrigated agriculture, and there's just a lot of competing needs and uses and demands for the water.
And you had people that were facing a water cutoff, possibly facing bankruptcy and just catastrophic financial damage to their businesses and their families. And yet this thing came off without a hitch. There was no violence. It was very civil. We had a great turnout, and the community was behind us.
It was a wild day. I mean, we had so many rigs, we just didn't know what to do with them. I mean, we had a logistics problem. We had no idea that it was going to be that many people show up.
That night I got home and turned on the TV, and that's when all the civil unrest was occurring up in Portland and Eugene. There was riots in Eugene happening that very same night. I looked at that and said, boy, that's pretty intense what's happening up there. And yet you have people here whose livelihoods were at risk, and they chose to sort of demonstrate in a peaceful way. It was the sort of the contrast was, even though they're different issues, the contrast was striking to me.
During the event, we had Congressman Walden and Congressman Moffett were here and took part in the event. And Greg took the message and Doug took the message back to DC.
Less than a week ago, many of us in our own way thought about those men and women who have worn our nation's uniform and did not come home. We called it Memorial Day. And I think about the farmers and ranchers of this basin who were veterans and asked by their government, given a preference by their government to come and settle this land and farm this with a guarantee of low-cost power and a guarantee of water. And on the week when we've celebrated Memorial Day, or honored our veterans, acknowledged their incredible sacrifice, we should not have to gather again with crosses in a field and flags in our hands to watch the water get shut off and those very veteran families and their descendants lose what is their right.
A little over a month after the big convoy, the Secretary of Interior and the Commissioner of the Bureau of Reclamation and the Regional Director of Fish and Wildlife and the Regional Director for the Bureau of Reclamation came to Klamath Falls.
And the truth of the matter is, this whole day has been devoted to learning more about the issues. Every decision we make has to be grounded in the facts and the law. I think we're walking away here today with some ideas of how we might look at this differently.
And made an announcement right out here in this field, basically saying that they're going to take a hard look at the science that had not been updated in a long time, and try to use an approach similar to what they did for the Central Valley Project in California to come up with an operations plan that just didn't put the burden of the regulatory ESA-related scheme on the farmers alone.
Immediately when he got back to DC, he allocated $1.2 million to science. Well, that's not going to help us right away, but that is a good thing. It's a great thing, because we haven't had any impartial science in this project for a long, long time.
You know, I've been doing this stuff for 30 years. Very rarely have I seen a cabinet member of president come out and make a visit like that. He didn't make any promises, but he came back, and you could see the actions that have rolled out since then. It's been, really encouraging.
All the blame's been put on the salmon for the Klamath Project, and yet we're only 3% of the water that goes out the mouth of the river. So we can't solve 100% of the salmon problems with 3% of the water that comes from this project.
I think as a community, we are more aware than ever that water is precious to what we do here, whether you work on a farm, run a small business, or just raise your family here. And so I think people are paying attention to what's happening with water.
Ever since they started, the Fish and Wildlife started raising the lake levels and holding them high year-round, that's when the suckers started dying. They've died ever since they started that practice. So all I can tell is history. History tells us what they're doing now doesn't work, and what we did then, for whatever reason, worked.
I mean, no one wants to see the extinction of a species, and I sure as hell don't want to see our nation starve or our basin turn into dust. So I hope there is, and I think we can. I think we need some good leadership. I think we need the right people talking, and those loud voices on the extreme right and the extreme left just need to be quieted down. They're not helping a damn thing.
I was pretty emotional for a while, because it's something I never expected, and it felt good that everybody came out to support the farm community and the ranch community.
I think it said a lot about our entire community, the way the entire community came together to support each other. And we've seen a lot of that since with the pandemic, and it's one of the things I love about living in this community is the way that the community rallies behind each other.
It was one of those things that it hits you that what your community's all about, and how together we can be on something. It's been a really divided community on how to fix these water problems, and water rights, and people that feel strongly about refuges, people that feel strongly about tribes, people that feel strongly about the river. That day it was all about trying to get through 2020.
This has been a year when everybody's kind of come together in a year when we couldn't be together, and emotionally I think it's really helped people to realize there's a whole community of people there with you. You don't have to do this by yourself, and that's been powerful.
John Crawford's powerful words that he said to this community, I go back and I listen to that, and it gives me chills to hear him say that.
That if we want to stand up for America, we must stand up for American farmers. You feed our people, you fuel our nation. You sustain our land, you uphold our values, and you preserve our cherished way of life. There are no better stewards of our precious natural resources than the American farmers who depend on the land and the environment for their very livelihood. America has always been a farming nation, founded, built, and grown by people just like you, who pour out their heart, soul, and sweat into this land.
It was a long day, but it was going home at nights. It was great. I mean, it was hard to express how good I felt.